All right. Shalom, family. It's your brother Kanaiba coming at you once again with this video titled, Whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Acts chapter 2 and verse 21, examination. Okay, so as you can see by the title and the thumbnail, we're going to be dealing with this particular scripture in the Bible, Acts chapter 2 and verse 21. Okay, because this is a particular verse that, much like John 3:16, is taken completely out of context, particularly by the quote-unquote Christian church. Okay? This particular verse is used to try to justify this notion that all people can receive salvation. Okay? And as we know, that's actually a false notion, right? Because what really trips people up, as we're going to look at, is this word whosoever, right? And what people will do, they'll read that word whosoever, and they'll automatically think that whosoever means every single person on the planet, not knowing that that's not always the case. That's not always the case, because there are certain instances where the word whosoever, there's a context to that word. Okay, for example, if I were to, let's say if I were to come to your house with a box of donuts, and I walk in the door and I say, whosoever wants any of these donuts can have some. Okay, am I talking to people in China? Am I talking to people in Africa? Am I talking to people in Italy? No. There's a context to the word whosoever that I use. I'm talking about anybody that's within the household I just walked in. Those are the individuals that I'm saying can actually have some of the donuts that I brought in. There was a context to the word whosoever. And that's the case when we read this word in the Bible. Okay? But we're going to get into this verse and actually get the understanding of this verse within its context. Okay? So first, how I want to open up, I actually want to go to Google Images and actually show you something, just to show how people completely take this word out of context, right? So here we have it. We are on Google Images, and you see I typed in the word whosoever, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down on the results of the search of this word whosoever. Okay. Now, as you can see right at the very top right hand corner here of the results, it says I'm a whosoever, right? I'm a whosoever. Now, what you're going to notice is there's going to be a theme here. Okay. So now let's scroll a bit here. Okay. So now let's scroll up a bit. So now you see here, look at that. I'm a whosoever. I'm a whosoever. Okay. And notice it was with John 3:16, right? Still saying I'm a whosoever. Look at this. That's the thing. It's not saying whosoever. It's saying I'm a whosoever. Okay. Let's continue scrolling. I'm a whosoever, John 3:16, right? I'm a whosoever, John 3:16. I'm a whosoever, John 3:16. Okay, but y'all are getting the point, right? You see this? That's the thing when you simply type in the word whosoever in the search bar, okay? And it's giving you basically a view of the mindset of the average person, especially the average Christian, when it comes to the word whosoever. Okay. All of those, really almost all of those results said, I'm a whosoever. And notice it was linked to John 3:16. Okay. Which means even in 2024, they're still taking that verse out of context as well. Okay. But anyway, now what I want to do, let's actually go into the scriptures and let's put this verse, Acts 2:21, in its proper context. Okay. So let's get to it. So, of course, this is Acts chapter 2 and verse 21. And it reads, it says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Okay. So now, again, like I said earlier, what tends to trip people up when they read this verse and verses like it is this word whosoever. Okay. And what really amazes me is the projection that comes from people in Christianity. Okay, what they like to accuse us of, like cherry picking scriptures and, isolating verses and things of this nature, is actually what they are guilty of. Okay, because when you actually read this verse and you isolate it, okay, you just, put your focus on this one particular verse, okay, it's kind of understandable to come to the conclusion that this could be talking about all people on the face of the planet. Okay. But remember, I told you that there is a context to this word whosoever. And we're going to prove that it's not talking about every single person on the planet. Right? So first, what I want to do, I want to simply go to the very next verse, which is Acts chapter 2 and verse 22, and look at how it starts off. Let's read. Now watch closely. It says, ye men of Israel, hear these words. Allow me to repeat that part. Ye men of Israel, hear these words. Okay, so now we have the audience as to whom is being spoken to right after this verse in Acts 2 and 21. The audience are Israelites. Okay, that's who this message is to. Much like when you go to the book of John chapter 3, that was a conversation between two Jews / Israelites, Yahushua and Nicodemus. Okay, so it's just very funny to me how you go to Christianity and they try to insert all people into a conversation that was about a specific people. Okay, y'all remember that saying back in the day, this is an A and B conversation, so you can see your way out of it. So that's actually what's going on right here. Okay, this is a conversation between Israelites. Okay, this is not for everybody. Okay, but anyway, let's get back to it. Let's finish the verse out. It says, Jesus, or Yahushua of Nazareth, a man approved of God among you by miracles and wonders and signs. Now watch closely. Which God did by him in the midst of you, as ye yourselves also know. Now this part right here, where it says, which God did by him, meaning by Yahushua, in the midst of you, that is a very interesting choice of words by Peter, because that's who's speaking right here. Okay, that is a very interesting choice of words. Okay, but like I said, we're going to get into this and we're going to put it in its proper context. Okay, now let's actually go up to the very top of the chapter. Okay, and find out why the audience was the children of Israel. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's go back up to the top of this chapter and let's take a look at something. Okay, so this is Acts chapter 2 and verse 1, and it reads, it says, and when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. Okay, so now this verse is giving us a bit of context. Okay, this took place on the day of Pentecost. Okay, and Pentecost is it's a high holy day that was only given to the children of Israel. Okay, and notice it says they were all with one accord in one place. Okay, why is that? Again, this is a high holy day that was only given to the children of Israel. Okay, that's why when you read Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 16, it says this. Now watch closely. It says, 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yahweh thy power in the place which he shall choose. Okay, it says in the place where he shall choose. Okay, that's why when you look at the highlighted above, it says they were all with one accord in one place. That's the place where the Most High Yahweh chose, which we know is Jerusalem. We'll get to that in a minute, right? But it goes on to say, now watch this. It says, in the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. And they shall not appear before Yahweh empty. Okay, now what we want to put focus on here is where it says, and in the feast of weeks. Okay, right there, the feast of weeks is another name or title for Pentecost. Okay, Pentecost and the feast of weeks are the same high holy day. Okay, and again, this is a law that's only given to the children of Israel. Okay, again, letting us know who the audience is in Acts chapter 2. Okay, so now that we've laid that out, let's go back to Acts chapter 2, and we're going to jump down a bit and look at something else here. Okay, so this is Acts chapter 2 and verse 5, and it reads, now watch closely. It says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Okay, so the very beginning of this verse says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews. Okay, so these were Jews or Israelites that were there. That's the audience. Again, giving us more context. Okay, clarifying who the audience actually is that Peter and the rest of the apostles are addressing in Acts chapter 2. Okay, so not only does it say it was Jews, but look at this. Again, the end of the verse says, out of every nation under heaven. Okay, so these were Jews that lived in all these different various places that came together in Jerusalem for the Feast of Pentecost. Okay, but they were all, in fact, Jews. These weren't different nations of people. These were Jews that came out of every nation. Okay, and they came to the place where Yahweh chose. Okay, which is Jerusalem, and they came there for what? The Feast of Weeks, aka the Feast of Pentecost. Okay, so now just giving us more context again as to whom the audience is. These are Israelites. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to jump down a few more verses and I want to take a look at something else here. Okay, So this is Acts chapter 2 and verse 16. And it reads, it says, "But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel." Okay, so now looking at the end of this verse, okay, Peter is about to quote the prophet Joel. Okay, so what you're going to understand is, and what we're about to get into, is from verse 17 to verse 22, Peter is quoting the book of Joel chapter 2. Okay, and that's very important to giving the context to Acts 2 and 21, where Peter quoted and said, "And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved." What you're about to find out, that's not something that Peter just, pulled up or just thought up. Okay, he's quoting the book of Joel chapter 2. Okay, and there's a context to that. There's a reason why he quoted that. Okay, and that's what we're about to get into. So what we're about to do is we're about to do some comparing and contrasting. Okay, what I want to do is I want to put the passage from Acts chapter 2 and the passage from Joel chapter 2 side by side. And we're going to compare it. And we're going to see that Peter is actually quoting the book of Joel chapter 2 verbatim, verse for verse. Okay? So without further ado, let's get into that. Okay? So moving forward here, I have a screenshot of both Acts chapter 2 and Joel chapter 2. Okay? So looking to the left of the screen, that's actually Acts chapter 2, where we left off at, right? And to the right, of course, is Joel chapter 2. Okay? So now we're about to compare what Peter said in Acts chapter 2, starting at verse 17 on down, and compare it to what Joel said in Joel chapter 2. And we're going to see that Peter is quoting Joel practically verbatim, verse for verse. Okay, and we're going to get the context to Acts chapter 2 and verse 21, okay, because that's the whole point of the video, right? So now let's start at the top. Let's start with Acts chapter 2 and verse 17, okay? So this is what Peter quoted. He said, "And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams." Okay, so now let's go to the right here and let's look at Joel chapter 2, and let's see what it says. Okay, it says, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions." So again, we clearly see that both of these verses, verse 17 to the left, which is Acts chapter 2, and verse 28 to the right, which is Joel chapter 2, is saying the same thing. So we see what Peter was quoting in Joel chapter 2, right? Let's go to the next verse. Okay, Acts 2 and 18 on the left here. It says, "And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy." Okay, so now let's look at the next verse to the right, Joel 2 and 29. Let's see what it says. "And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit. So we see that saying the same thing. So far, Peter is practically quoting Joel verbatim, verse for verse, correct? Let's go to the next verse, right? So this is verse 19 to the left, Acts chapter 2, right? It says, and I will show wonders in heaven above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. Okay, so now let's go to the right and let's look at Joel chapter 2 and verse 30. And it reads, it says, and I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. Okay, so we see that Peter is quoting the book of Joel chapter 2 practically verbatim, verse for verse, right? Let's look at the next verse, verse 20. Okay, Acts chapter 2 and verse 20. It says, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and notable day of the Lord come. Okay, so now let's go to the right, Joel 2 and 31. Let's see what it says. It says, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and terrible day of the Lord cometh. Okay, again, practically verbatim, verse for verse. Now we're getting to the point, okay? Because again, when a quote unquote Christian simply brings up Acts chapter 2 and verse 21, you could just get right to the point and tell them, well, Peter is quoting Joel chapter 2, which is about Israelites. They're not going to believe you. Okay, that's why we're going through this, to show you what he's doing. Okay, so from verse 17 to 20, as we've seen, Peter has been quoting Joel chapter 2, correct? So you mean to tell me we get to verse 21 and he just stopped quoting the book of Joel? No. He's still quoting it, and we're about to see. Now watch this. Here is the point, right? It says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Well, now let's go to the right and let's see if Joel says the same thing. And it reads, this is Joel chapter 2 and verse 32. And it reads, it says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever, there's that word, whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. Okay, delivered, saved, same thing. Okay, so we see Peter is still quoting the book of Joel, chapter 2, practically verbatim, verse for verse. But here's the kicker. Okay, he's quoting Joel chapter 2. But see, in Joel chapter 2, Joel gives a bit more clarity as to whom this pertains to. That's the point. Okay, let's start from the top and then we're going to read it through. This is Joel 2 and verse 32, and it reads, it says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever, that word whosoever, shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. Now watch closely. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance. Allow me to repeat that part. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance. Let me ask y'all something. What does Mount Zion and Jerusalem represent? Does that represent all people on the face of the planet? No. Mount Zion and Jerusalem represents the children of Israel. That's the context. So again, and guess what? That word whosoever is in this verse. Again, just giving more credence to my original point. The word whosoever has a context to it. We even see this word whosoever in the book of Joel but it's clearly talking about a very specific people, not everybody on the face of the planet. Okay, so let's finish the verse out. This is the end of verse 32. It says, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. Okay, so we already know that Israel is whom the Lord has called, right? But within the children of Israel, or amongst the children of Israel, there's a remnant that's going to be saved, which is 1/3. 1/3 of it, 1/3 of Israel is going to be saved out of this Babylon the Great, which is America. Okay. But yeah, now we clearly see that there is a context to this word, whosoever. Okay, this is giving us more context to Acts 2 and 21. Okay, what Peter said. Okay, that whosoever are the children of Israel, Jerusalem, and Mount Zion. That's what he was quoting. He was quoting Joel chapter 2, and particularly verse 32, what we just read. That's the context. Okay, so now let's go back to Acts chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 22 again. And it reads, now again, watch closely. It says, ye men of Israel, hear these words. Okay, so we went through all of that. Now it should be crystal clear who the audience is. Okay, and who that whosoever is in Acts 2 and 21. Okay, it's still dealing with Israelites, not everybody on the planet. Okay, it says, ye men of Israel, hear these words. Yahushua of Nazareth, a man approved of God among you by miracles and wonders and signs. Now again, watch closely. Which God did by him in the midst of you, right? As ye yourselves also know. Now remember, I said this was a very interesting choice of words right here, where he said, which God did by him in the midst of you. Okay. Now, what if I told you that that particular language is also found in Joel chapter 2? Okay, because it is. That's why I said he's still really quoting Joel chapter 2. Okay, and we're going to take a look at that. Okay, now look at this. This is Joel chapter 2 and verse 27. And it reads, now watch closely. It says, and ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. Allow me to repeat that part. And ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. Sounds awful familiar, don't you think? Okay, but let's continue. It says, and that I am Yahweh, your power. Now watch this. And none else. Okay. It says, and my people shall never be ashamed. Now, look at that. Look at that. The end of that. Okay. It says, and my people shall never be ashamed. Don't that sound like Isaiah 45 and 17, where it clearly tells us that Israel is a world. Okay. It says, and Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation, and ye shall not be ashamed, nor confounded a world forever. You know, roughly paraphrasing, but yeah, it's the same wordage. Okay, same verbiage, same thing. All the prophets spoke the same words, as you clearly see. Okay, but let's get back to the original point here. Okay, it says, and ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. Okay, and looking at Acts 2 and 22, look at the blue highlighted, which God did by him in the midst of you. Again, confirming that he's in the midst of Israel. Again, Peter is pretty much still quoting the book of Joel. Okay, it's still the same thing. Okay, but that's the point. Getting back to the original point, there is a context to the word whosoever. Okay, you cannot just isolate verse 21 in Acts chapter 2 and make it about everybody when there's clearly a context to whom Peter is talking about. Okay? But anyway, I believe this is actually a good place to end the video. And again, the title of the video is Whosoever Shall Call on the Name of the Lord Shall Be Saved. Acts chapter 2 and verse 21, examination. Okay, so, it wasn't too long of a video. We just, looked at Acts chapter 2 and verse 21 and simply put it in its correct context. Okay, because as we already stated, the quote-unquote Christian church will take this verse and take it completely out of context and try to apply it to every single person on the planet. And that is in gross error. Okay, because that verse is not talking about every single person on the planet, because they basically misinterpret the word whosoever. Okay, not knowing that there is a context to the word whosoever. It's the same thing as John 3:16. Okay, there's a context to that word whosoever in that verse. Same thing here. Okay, so we always have to put the scriptures in its proper perspective, the proper context. Context is key. Okay, so with that, and as always, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High Yahweh, which is the name of the Heavenly Father, and I do so by Hashem, which means in the name of Yahweh Shai, which is the name of the only begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. And I want to thank all you brothers and sisters for tuning in. I hope this video was informative and edifying. And until next time, Shalom, family.